I'm a freshman in college now, but this happened years ago when I was in 8th grade, and it's something I still think about late at night. One evening, my mom, my 2 sisters, and I were coming home from the dollar store. We parked in the driveway and started unloading groceries from the trunk. My sisters went inside first, while my mom and I stayed behind to get the rest. It was around 8 or 9 p.m. in late November. For context, our house sits on a hill, deep down some back roads, through the woods. Our front yard is a downhill slope with a lot of open space. There are only a few trees scattered around, and on the other side of the driveway are dense woods. The driveway itself is very long. As my mom and I carried the last groceries toward the porch, we heard leaves crunching. We both stopped and looked into the yard. At first we thought it was a deer. Its head was hidden behind a tree, and it was dark outside. But then it took a few steps backward, moving into the light from our front porch. That's when we realized it wasn't a deer. The thing was completely pale and naked, extremely thin, and standing on all fours. It didn't have a face. Its head looked like a mannequin. Its body, I can only describe it as looking like a demogorgon from Stranger Things. It turned its head towards us. Then it stood up on its hind legs. It ran across the yard, over the driveway, and into the woods. The entire time, it stayed upright. It was freakishly tall, so tall that when it crossed the tree line, the tops of the trees shook as it passed. My mom and I ran inside and shut the door. Once inside, we just stared at each other. I asked her, "Did you see that too?" She asked, "What did you see?" I told her. She said she had seen the same thing. We locked the doors and went to bed. The next morning, my mom went back outside to the area where it ran across the driveway. That's when she saw the prints. At first it looked like deer tracks, but there were long sliding marks between them, and as the tracks continued, the hoof-like prints slowly turned into something closer to paws. My mom stopped following them after that. Over the next few days, strange things continued at night. One time, we had the sliding glass door open that leads to the back porch. Our dogs were standing there, growling harshly. My mom and I were trying to figure out what was upsetting them when we heard it. A loud, distant scream, like a howl and a cry, mixed together. We rushed the dogs inside and locked the door. Nothing else happened after that, and eventually we moved to another city for unrelated reasons. But whatever that thing was that I saw in the yard that night, whatever left those prints, I hope more than anything that I never come close to it again. This story has been in my family for generations and resulted in the creation of a strict rule in my family. So decades ago, my mother's maternal grandmother was newly married, really young, and lived in a village where almost every household had cattle. The villagers had a system where one man from each household would take all the village cattle to the forest to graze and bring them back before nightfall. My great-grandmother had a special bond with one of their newborn calves, a buffalo named Ranja. He was really attached to her too, would follow her around like a puppy, and respond to her calls. When he was old enough, he went to the forest for the first time with the herd. But when the cattle returned that evening, Ranja was missing. My great-grandmother panicked, and though her mother-in-law told her to wait for the men of the house to return, she didn't listen. Their village was on a cliff overlooking a valley, and across the valley was the forest. She went to the cliff's edge and started loudly calling out, "Ranja, come! Ranja, come here," hoping the echo would reach the forest. After a few calls, she heard a response, Ranja's voice calling back from the forest. But with each reply, his voice got louder, closer, and the pace was unnaturally fast, like it was jumping from the forest to the valley bottom to right near her. Then she looked down and saw something she would never forget. a buffalo-like creature standing upright like a human in the field below her, with eyes glowing red like headlights and breathing like it was furious. It let out a terrifying roar in Ranja's exact voice, and she collapsed in fear. Just then her husband, father-in-law, and some villagers arrived with torches. They saw the same creature before it, jumped into the valley, and vanished. Everyone was so shaken, they didn't go into the forest that night. The next morning, a search party found Ranja's bloodied body near the grazing grounds. His head was missing. Ever since that night, our family has had a strict rule: never call anyone by name after dark, especially while shouting for them, because something else might hear you and come instead. I used to think this was something from old times and would not happen now, until something eerily similar happened to my grandmother a couple of years ago, during the end of the COVID lockdown. A man from a nearby village passed her house with some sheep and lambs on his way to graze them. My nanny, being the social butterfly, stopped him for chai. They chatted a bit, and he went on his way. That evening, he passed by again while my nanny was busy in the kitchen. He called out from outside saying he was going home, and she waved him off from her window. Later that night, around 10 p.m., my nanny heard a lamb crying outside. She stepped out onto the roof and saw my cousin, her grandnephew, on the neighboring roof. They share a common courtyard with houses right next to each other. He heard it too. They both thought maybe one of the man's lambs got left behind, and my cousin asked if he should go down in the farms where the cries were coming from and carry him home. My nanny absolutely refused, and instead they started calling out gently for it like you would to a lost puppy. At first the crying seemed far, like it was from a few farms away, but each time they called, it got closer, unnaturally fast, until the sound was right there in their courtyard. But there was no lamb. Realizing what was happening, my nanny shouted at my cousin to run inside, and she rushed back in too. Nothing else happened that night. A few days later, the same man came by again, and when asked, said none of his animals were missing. When my grandmother told him what happened, he got serious and said, "You're experienced. You should know better. Don't call out like that at night." In my family, we don't shout anyone's name after dark, even today. This happened to me just outside Vancouver, British Columbia, about 15 years ago. I was out for dinner with my father and one of his friends. When we left the restaurant, we took 2 separate cars. My dad drove his own, and I rode as a passenger with his friend. Everything felt completely normal at first, but about halfway to my father's house, something strange happened. Out of nowhere, I was hit with an overwhelming wave of sickness. It came on suddenly and intensely. We had to pull over so I could throw up. And then, just as fast as it started, it was gone. I felt completely fine again, like nothing had happened. When we reached my father's property, we turned onto the driveway. It was extremely steep. His house sat on a sloped mountainside lot. As we started up the driveway, my father's friend suddenly slammed on the brakes. Right in front of us, crossing the driveway from right to left, was what looked like a woman. I say looked like because something was very wrong. We couldn't see a face at all. Her hair was impossibly long, down to her knees, hanging all around her. She wore a white dress with frills. There were no feet. She wasn't walking. She was floating. The headlights lit her up clearly enough that she seemed solid. But she moved quickly and silently across our path and disappeared. We both just sat there, frozen, completely stunned. Then instinct kicked in. We drove the rest of the way up, got out of the car, and ran straight into the house. About 10 minutes later, my father's friend ended up in the bathroom, violently throwing up. That's when it really hit me. Whatever I felt earlier, whatever passed in front of the car, it didn't feel like a coincidence. I still think about it to this day, and honestly, it still creeps me out. Have a paranormal experience of your own? share it with us at officialphantom.mic@gmail.com. Whether in text or voice recording, we want to hear your story. Thank you for tuning in to Phantom Mic, and remember, if you still feel alone, you weren't listening closely enough.